supposed to be. Put me a rag on. So if you need clean glasses, I got a rag for you.
I'd like to call to order this commission meeting of June the 13th in Lynn Haven, Florida, and welcome you all here. Would you please stand for an opening prayer? I did not have anyone today to ask the invocation, so if you'll allow me to do so, I will take those honors. Father God, we thank you so much for allowing us to come together today to see to the business of the city of Lynn Haven. Bless each person who is here today. Bless their members of their household. Thank you so much again for the opportunity of a free and democratic government in which to live and to enjoy our lives and to enjoy those freedoms which we are afforded. Make us ever mindful of the sacrifices that are being made daily by the military as they stand on the front lines and elsewhere to protect those freedoms. And we ask a special blessing on every member of the community who has come out tonight to add their voice to the city government of Lynn Haven. Amen. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item number 3 of today's agenda is the mayor's report. I have a very short report, but a very thankful report. As many of you know, I've been out of town for a little over 2 weeks as my husband underwent open heart surgery at Emory University, and I do have a great report. He did very well, a triple bypass. He is a 3-tour Vietnam veteran and has many different issues with his health over the past years, and we've been very blessed with strength to overcome those, and he's looking forward to complete recovery. He's at home, and he's starting to complain about my cooking, so things are looking better. And I also have some things coming up in the next week. I will be meeting with FDOT Secretary for District 3 on June the 21st, and we'll be discussing with him some of our traffic issues in Lynn Haven, and our city manager, Mr. Schubert, has also agreed to go along with me on that meeting, and we'll be discussing everything from some safety crossings on the county roads 390 and 389, as well as some possible crossings on 77. I personally have some great issues with the speed at which people are driving through Lynn Haven still on Highway 77, in particular the intersection by Po Folks, Sam's Seafood, Ace Hardware, coming off the bridge. I think there are a lot of potential dangers that our citizens are facing because of those who pass through our town not adhering to the 35-mile-per-hour speed limit. So I've got several issues to discuss with him, and I'll be reporting back to you on that. Looking forward to my first meeting with the Bay County TPO, which that will be June the 28th. I have met with the city manager a couple of times in the past few days since I've been back in town, just to kind of bring me back up to speed. I'm feeling very overwhelmed and behind, so trying to work with that. Several dozens of voicemails that I'm still responding to, so if you're one of those people that I've not yet responded to, please forgive me in advance, and I will be in touch with you within the next couple of days. And this afternoon, I did participate in a webinar with the Florida League of Cities at 2 p.m. Talking about some of the federal budget cuts that are coming up to CDBG and Tiger grants, as well as home investment partnership programs. And the League of Cities works very hard so that municipalities are kept up to speed on federal issues which can impact us as cities. And I have joined the member of the FAST committee, which is a federal committee that travels to Washington, D.C. twice a year to speak with our representatives and also to address these types of issues that can impact us financially and in other ways as municipalities. I wanted to especially thank Mayor Pro Tem Friend for attending the Memorial Day service in my stead because I was out of town. We had I understand, a very beautiful ceremony at our Memorial Park, and then I also had a very interesting meeting with a member of the community who is interested in perhaps funding a large portion of the splash pad that we're working for. So I'll be giving you some updates on that as soon as I talk with him some more. So that's pretty much my report, other than I'm just very happy to be back and feeling very blessed. So I'll move on to Commissioner Russell.
I just want to let you know that I'm still trying to get my feet wet and learn what's going on in the city of Lynn Haven. By that means, I want to thank City Manager Schubert for giving me a tour of the Public Works. He took me through the police department and the fire department. Thank you, Fire Chief and Police Chief. I also want to thank Greg Tidwell for giving me a tour through the sewer treatment plant, and Derek Rizzuto for giving me a tour through the water treatment plant. Again, every time I go someplace new in the city, I'm getting more and more impressed with the city. So, and I also want to thank the Garden Club for putting on the lunch the other day for the employees of the city of Lynn Haven. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Commissioner Tender?
I too attended the Garden Club luncheon, and I'll tell you what, those ladies know how to cook. That was some seriously good food that day. I have a few issues that people have brought to my attention, and I'm just going to put them out there. Had an older gentleman call me and ask me if we could get a mailbox put at City Hall. He's uneasy about leaving his mail in his box, and of course the post office is down the way. I don't know. I haven't even talked to city manager or anybody about that. I assisted a family on Carolina Avenue that was concerned about a dead tree, and I have to thank Bobby Baker and his crew. I talked to this lady last Thursday, and the tree is gone, and they took care of it that quickly. I had the follow-up on the camera installation at Public Works over our gas pumps. I'd like everybody to know that they're up and running, and at less than $1,000 cost. And I really appreciate Bobby's hard work on that, too. You moved on that. I had a resident request a stop sign at 1100 block of New York. She says that there are a lot of little kids there, and the people are just flying by there. I also had another resident come by from 26th Street. You know, that little side street that goes parallel with the main road there? Well, I guess people park on the street, and there are families there that have basketball courts facing the street. So what's happening is the kids are playing basketball and coming out in between cars. She was concerned about that, and I told her we would check into it. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of meeting with Mr. Chris Forehand for over an hour. I talked his ear off, but he taught me a lot, and I appreciate that. And we just discussed the ongoing and upcoming projects for Panhandle Engineering. And that's all I've got.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'll go ahead and ask for Commissioner Friend's report.
Whatever you want to do.
And then, pardon me?
Whichever.
Before I ask for Commissioner Friend's report, I need to ask for a motion from someone on the commission to excuse Commissioner Barnes from this meeting. He's not able to attend today. And then a second for that motion, please.
So move. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the board? Okay, Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender? Yes. Mayor Anderson?
Yes. So he stands approved. Thank you. Commissioner Friend, your report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. As you guys know, I reported that the Lynn Haven Elementary fifth graders were going to come over. They did. We had a great time, Mayor. We did miss you. But we had a good time, and of course we had to discuss golf carts. So it was very interesting. It's always interesting to see. I think it was kind of split. Some were for, some were against, so it was kind of fun. Did attend the service. Thank the Garden Club for putting that on year after year. They do always do such a great day, and they have it on the actual Memorial Day service, Memorial Day for that service. So it was really, really well done. I didn't get to go to lunch as usual, so I missed that. Excuse me. Also attended the fundraiser at the St. Andrews Bay Center, and I just want to say a special thank you to Commissioner Tender for her participation in that. That was a great event, and I hope they raised a lot of money, and I'm sure they did with the chicken salad that she provided. So it was outstanding as usual. And then also Commissioner Russell did join me with the fifth grader, so he got his taste of what that's all about. So the other thing is some folks have asked about the work that they're seeing on 389 between 390 and Baldwin Road. So I just wanted to give everyone a heads up on what that is. The county had approved a multi-purpose path. So, because as we all know, the county owns that road. But I was kind of instrumental in that with the TPO and get it on the project priorities list at the TPO level. So when FDOT, when the funding became available, the county, I really appreciate the county stepping up and doing that. So that's the work that you see. It's the surveying going on right now for the right-of-way. So eventually we'll have a multi-purpose path utilizing the Safeway to Kids funding, I believe, the grant money from that to have a multi-purpose path going from 390 all the way to Baldwin, which of course will tie in nicely to our Rails for Trails eventually. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
And I needed to add one other item to the mayor's report this evening. When we have our newfound commissioner, Dan Russell, he left a vacancy on our CRA advisory board, and we had alternates elected to those positions. And so Richard Walker was our alternate, and he has graciously agreed to step into that position. So I just wanted to congratulate you on that, and I know that all the knowledge that you have about CRAs will be very valuable to this committee. So congratulations, and thank you for agreeing to serve. Then moving on to item number 5 is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. You may have noticed the construction on the chambers in the police department building. That is something that was planned before this fiscal year. They're working on the roof. They're finishing that up. They also did the library. What they're doing now is they're gutting the inside walls over here, and the idea is, or what's going to be done is the PD1 up the road south of us on 77 is going to be combined. So patrol and admin are going to be in the same place, and that obviously is going to introduce a lot of efficiencies both for the department and for our citizens. So we're excited about that. Part of the remodel also includes upgrading the what appears to be preschool facilities that we have over here as far as the bathroom. So that's going to be a welcome change for you all as well. We're also going to paint these 3 buildings before the end of this fiscal year as well, so that'll update the image, make it look less like a church and more like a civic building, or the chambers as it were. Typically we have a employee of the month. In this case it's the employees of the month, and it's the A shift of the fire department. We recognized them about 2.5 months ago. They did the bed race, and they had just a great bed. Thought they came in first, but we got rooked a little bit. But rather than drag all of them into the commission meeting, we're going to bring them lunch later next week. I'll let the commission know when that is, and we'll give them the plaque and all the accoutrements then. And the last thing I have is, as far as the city manager position, that's been advertised, as you know. It closes June 23rd. And we've got about right at 20 applications. I anticipate we'll have double that by the time it closes. And I will be sending the commission a schedule of what I think the best way to kind of expedite that, but still go through all the due process or due diligence. And I plan on spending that Saturday and Sunday going through as requested by the commission and shortlisting them. I've got a spreadsheet that has all the relevant information, but I'll be at the very least emailing all that to you, and we'll have a hard copy available as well as a timeline of how that occurs, and that's all I have.
Thank you so much. City Attorney's report.
Yes, ma'am. Just one quick thing. I'm sure you all have heard that the legislature passed the medical marijuana legislation, and just to remind you all, we have a moratorium in place in the city until August, and I'll be getting up with the city manager, and we'll bring something back to you if to see how y'all want to proceed with medical marijuana before the moratorium is expired. That's all.
Thank you. Okay, this time we'll be moving forward with several public hearings, and each of these has to be announced by time and close, so it'll be sort of a boring next 20 minutes, to say the least. We'll try to make it as exciting as possible. Okay, the public hearing is now opening. It is 4:14. This is the large-scale comprehensive plan text amendment, ESR 17-3, transmittal resolution number 2017-06-685. These are amendments relating to a multimodal mobility plan, and Ms. Richard, our city planner, has some information for us. Thank you.
I'm going to try and speak a bit louder because apparently people have trouble hearing me. Although I was sharing earlier that my mother always said I had a voice like a foghorn, so I find that hard to believe. But anyway, I'm going to try harder. This is a comprehensive plan text amendment, and what's being proposed is adding a transportation mobility element to establish a multimodal transportation system and mobility fee structure to the comprehensive plan. Also, to amend the capital improvements element and concurrency management system of the comprehensive plan to accommodate that transportation mobility element. This will also entail removing outdated references to 9J5, which doesn't exist anymore, of the Florida Administrative Code, and proportionate fair share. These proposed comprehensive plan amendments are deliverables which are required by a technical assistance grant that the city received from the Department of Economic Opportunity to prepare a multimodal mobility plan and fee structure. The grant was 100% funded with no fiscal impact to the city. I'm going to give you a little bit of background information on this, but I think the one thing that I want you to take from this tonight is that what we're asking for tonight is simply for you to vote on whether to transmit this to DEO or not. The grant had different deliverables for the funding. We've carried out the work, but the final deliverable is transmitting it to them. And then they will look at it and they will let you all know whether it's something that you can then proceed with if you want to. And if they tell you that you can, we can then workshop it. It'll be an ordinance, so there would be 2 readings, but you could definitely have a workshop with full information prior to you having to make any decisions on the actual thing. Just a little bit of information. The mobility plan identifies transportation needs within the city and provides for different mobility options for cars as well as pedestrians, bicycles and transit users. A multimodal fee would allow the fees to be used to improve all modes of mobility in the city and not just roads. We had transportation fees in the city before. We still have them for single-family homes, but we don't have any for commercial or industrial, etc. They were frozen, basically. They were so high that they were detrimental to economic development, so they were frozen. And then the state also, at one point, required us to have something called proportionate fair share, which meant that the city was required to collect fees for failing segments of road to pay for the required improvements, but we are no longer required to have that. So we have taken that out of our land development code. A concurrency management system is still in place, and what that says is basically before you can develop something, you have to make sure that those facilities for the development are in place, be that water, sewer, etc. They have taken away the requirement that we have road facilities in our capital improvements element. We no longer are required to do that. So basically right now, the city has no funding mechanism for big development. And we have a number of roads that are either failing their level of service or approaching their level of service. So when this grant opportunity came up, that we wouldn't have to pay anything to carry out the data and analysis to put a plan together, we applied for it and we received the grant so that we have that basically on the shelf, or you can implement it if you wish to implement it. And I'm not going to go through all these slides because I think that it'll just be a bit overkill. But basically in 2011, the Community Planning Act in the statute stated that local governments are encouraged to develop tools and techniques to complement transportation concurrency, including long-term strategies to facilitate development patterns that support multimodal solutions, including urban design and appropriate land use mixes. We have done this. So this is something that the state recommended, and it's something that we've been able to do at no cost to ourselves.
Are there any questions from the board regarding Ms. Richards' report or about the mobility plan? It's quite extensive, and I believe that the meeting was January the 3rd Was it not the hearing?
Yes, we had a public workshop, which was part of the first deliverable, where I went through a whole presentation and explained everything in some depth, and that was public notice, but unfortunately the only people who attended were the planning board.
Right.
But we took comments from the planning board, and their comments have also been addressed with this mobility plan.
Are there any questions from the public regarding this, the mobility plan? And there was quite a bit of public input as well. I was reading through some of that. The workshop was held, it was 2 days after New Year's and the holidays and all that. I think that probably was part of the reason why there was not attendance. I know I was out of town myself when that was going on. But I do like the plan. I did have one question I wanted to ask you, and I'll get your question as well. My question was, do you recall how long it's been that the commercial portion of this was frozen?
Well, I started working at the city in 2012, and it was frozen then. So
Okay.
we've never had them. They were very, very high. And you probably noticed the table, which
Yes.
was given the proposed tiers.
Yes.
It's way reduced. So it
Yes.
means that the city would have a mechanism of collecting something, but it wouldn't be a detriment to development. And in fact, infill development would hardly pay anything at all.
In the neighborhood of $4,000 for most people is what I'm looking at on the tables.
Well,
for the commercial.
for the commercial, it was about $5,000 per 1,000 square feet.
Right.
And now it's like, in some places, something like 300, I think. I mean,
Yes.
it's way down. I also wanted to mention that this agenda item did go to the Planning Commission last week, and they all voted that they recommended, it was unanimous, that they
was
recommend
unanimous.
that you transmit it.
Okay, thank you. And I believe, Mr. Walker, you had a question? You just address the whole board, and then Ms. Richard can address if it's her question.
I will address the board only.
Okay, thank you.
Two questions. When DCA was invoked and used, and still is, DCA is still there, we were allowed 3 large-scale amendments per year. What number is this? And is that still in effect, that law? 3 large-scale amendments?
I don't think
per
it's the
year.
same, but yeah, go ahead. Ms. Richard's going to address your question. Thank you.
DCA is in fact no longer in existence. It's now the Department of Economic Opportunity. Quite a few things changed in 2011. One of those things that has actually changed is that they no longer call it a large-scale plan amendment. It's an expedited state review. And there is no. I mean, there used to be 2 transmittal cycles. You can only have 2 cycles per year. That is no longer in existence. No.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
I didn't get to hear most of it, but as I understand it, we're limited down to 2
Cycles.
cycles. And in those cycles, we're allowed how many large-scale?
I don't think there's
Or is there no more numbers?
not. Go ahead.
It used to be 2 cycles, I think is what Ms. Richards was saying, but that's been eliminated now. There's no.
Everything's been eliminated.
Exactly. It's called expedited state review. They don't even really call it a large-scale plan amendment anymore.
That answers the question. Concerning this one, just one thing I observed in it. We're changing from our impact fees, if we get this approval of this, to what they want on this one per the grant. Is there an increase on the commercial or residential mixed use, whatever we want to throw in there? The impact fees that we presently have, is it increased with this?
My understanding is no, but I'll defer to attorney or Ms. Richard. It's lower, right?
I noticed
Yes.
it went from 1,500 down to 5.
My understanding is much lower, but
Is it going down?
There's currently no moratorium.
This isn't regular impact fees. This would be replacing the transportation impact fees. And in the chart, every single categorization is either for residential single family, one categorization is the same. For everything else, particularly commercial and industrial, it's by far reduced. It's much, much less.
but it is something.
There's something, and it isn't what they want. It isn't what DEO want. It's what our analysis has come up with. And Mike Hetmans, who carried out the analysis for us, is actually here, so he wouldn't mind answering some questions. But when this comes back to you, if you transmit it, as I said, I recommend we have a public workshop, so that, you know, we can get into all the nitty-gritties and we can really look into it in depth at that point.
That was excellent.
Okay, thank you. Anyone
Thank you.
else have a question or comment
you.
on this item? Okay. Then at this time, it's 4:24, and the public hearing on item number 7 is closed, with possible action coming on item number 22 in today's meeting. Okay, item number 8, this public hearing begins at 4:25. It is a request for annexation, the final reading of ordinance number 1030, Andrews Plantation. Do we have that ordinance, or does Ms. Richard have it? I'm sorry, I just jumped ahead a little bit. Okay, thank you.
Ordinance number 1030, an ordinance annexing into the municipal limits of the city of Lynn Haven, Florida pursuant to Florida statute section 171.044, certain contiguous compact and unincorporated land, parcel number 11573-050-000, located between County Road 389 and the Cameron's Crossing subdivision, consisting of approximately 24.84 acres of property as more particularly described herein, amending the boundaries of the city to include said land, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, and I believe at this time, Ms. Richard, our city planner, has some information for us on this request for annexation. Thank you.
This is a request for annexation. The applicant is GAC Contractors, Inc., location 4836 Highway 389, parcel number 11573-050-000. The size of the property is an approximate 24.84 acres, currently obviously in the county. The agent is Jim Slanina from Panhandle Engineering, but we have Chris Forehand here tonight in his stead, if you have any questions. The property is contiguous on the east side with Cameron's Crossing subdivision, and water and sewer is available, and they're the things that have to be taken into consideration in order to be able to annex a property into the city. This is a map which shows the location, difficult to see, but the outline is in red. It's like a T-shape, kind of on its side, T-shape parcel. Here it is again, this is the aerial, and you can see Cameron's Crossing there on the right-hand side, so it backs onto Cameron's Crossing. Currently it's in the county. This shows its location in the county, and its land use is residential R1. It's surrounded by low-density residential in the city and would become low-density residential land use if it were annexed in. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board or comments? There are none. Any questions from the public during this public hearing? There appear to be none. So at this time, this public hearing will close at 4:27. Item number 8, another public hearing which will begin at 4:27. This is the, item number 9. This public hearing is a large-scale comprehensive plan future land use map amendment, ESR 17-1, and this is also a final reading of an ordinance number 1031 regarding the fuel depot property. Mr. City Manager, if you would mind reading that ordinance, please.
An ordinance of the City Commission for the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, amending the adopted comprehensive plan, providing for purpose and intent, providing for a title, amending the future land use map from 1 research park to mixed use and commercial, and 2 public institutional and low-density residential to mixed use for parcels of land located at the former site of the United States Air Force Lynn Haven Field Depot north of State Highway 390, which is approximately 110 acres within the city as more accurately described in Exhibit B, providing for severability, providing for a copy on file, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Richard, if you would provide us with your report, please, on item number 9.
This is a large-scale comprehensive plan future land use map amendment, ESR 17-1. This is the final reading of this ordinance, and this is the public hearing. The project is known as the Fuel Depot property. The applicant is Blue Water Development Partners, LLC, and the location is the Lynn Haven Fuel Depot property and railroad right-of-way, which was the former, is the Air Force, the old Air Force Fuel Depot. The parcel size, 110 acres. The parcel numbers are all listed there, and if anybody wants them, I'll be happy to give them the parcel numbers. And also the 100-foot wide railroad right-of-way from Causeway Southeast to Highway 390. The current land use is public institutional research park, and 1.6 acres of it is low-density residential. The proposed land use, the requested land use, would be commercial on 34 acres and mixed use on 76 acres, which would include that 100-foot railroad right-of-way. This in blue highlights the entirety of the property that we're asking, or that the applicant is asking for the land use change on. This is the aerial. This shows the aerial. The adjacent land use compatibility. To the north, it's the open waters of North St Andrews Bay. The south is industrial, which also allows for multifamily units. The east is public institutional, the FSU portion of the parcel, and the west is industrial. This is what it looks like currently. The blue is public institutional, and the brown is research park, and then the strip going down, the right-of-way, railroad right-of-way has no designation. This is what it will look like with the land use change. And I wanted to let you know that this has been already transmitted to the Department of Economic Opportunity, and they have given the city the go-ahead to adopt it, if you wish to adopt it. Following a capacity analysis, it was established that there is capacity in the required areas of water, sewer, and solid waste. There is also adequate infrastructure in place to service the property, to get to the property when it's developed, because concurrency requires those things. And as far as the roads go, I know that that was, some people had some concerns about roads. A trip generation potential table for the current land use, so how many trips would be allowed now with the land use that is there now if you didn't change it, was submitted to FDOT, as well as a proposed development plan that provided a threshold for which the property will be developed so it won't exceed the existing capacity. So basically they've given a certain number of units per type, and there will be no more traffic generated post-development from this property than is allowable now, without it going back through you and through the state for future amendments. So the proposed development plan was submitted and approved by FDOT. So all the state agencies have approved it, and now it's up to you as to whether you want to later on in the agenda.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Appear to be none. Any questions or comments from the public? Yes, sir.
Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. This ongoing saga with the fuel depot gets to be a very interesting reality show. The one question that came up here, it said the applicant was Blue Waters. Blue Waters doesn't own it. I don't understand how they can do something with something they don't own.
The closing has not taken place yet. Go ahead, please.
Ma'am, they have we have a letter of authorization from the Air Force authorizing Blue Water and the city to apply on their behalf.
That's correct. They have a letter of authorization for the first one, not the second one. This is the second change of this. Air Force doesn't care what you do with that property because they own it. And they are the applicants, and they should be the applicant on this. I believe you're saying something here that's getting the cart before the horse. This continues on and on about this. I maintain this. Yes, there is a letter, and I did see the letter, and I read it. It was a long time ago when the first land use went in, and the stipulation in the letter said, you can do what you want. And you did. Now you've got a second land use change, and this is a second large-scale amendment. And it seems to be, I think you better dot your I's and T's before you get into a sticky waters here. You change it from a research park, that was the first one, to a mixed use and whatever you want to do now, commercial. I know it's to the benefit of Blue Waters to get it done before you purchase it, but also you got to consider this. Blue Waters will not be the applicant. As I understand the chain of linkage here is the property is going to be sold to the city first. The city is going to be the owner.
Briefly, for a few moments.
Yes, but the city will be the owner. So wouldn't they be an applicant also?
I'll defer to the attorney on that one.
We have a letter of authorization from the Air Force and authorizing, giving the Air Force is giving the city and Blue Water authority to apply for this land use change.
Oh, that one I didn't see. I'll have to ask for that one.
We'll be
Thank
happy
you.
to give it to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Walker. Anyone else have a comment or a question? Okay, at this time, this public hearing is closed at 4:35. Moving on to item number 10, this public hearing will also open at 4:35. This is the Small-Scale Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map Amendment, SSA 17-1, final reading of ordinance number 1032 regarding the Johnson property. Mr. Schubert, if you would please read the ordinance. Thank you.
Ordinance number 1032, an ordinance providing for the adoption pursuant to Chapter 163 Florida statutes of a land use change from commercial to mixed use for an approximate 4.879 acres of property located at 3755 Highway 389 in the city of Lynn Haven, Bay County, Florida, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith and providing an effective date.
Thank you. Ms. Richard, your report, please. Thank you.
This is a small-scale future land use map amendment, and a small scale means it's under 10 acres. The project is to amend the land use from its current land use to a mixed-use land use, as we'll see in a moment. The applicants are Benjamin and Catherine Johnson, and they are here tonight if you had any questions for them. The location is 3755 Highway 389. The parcel number is 11823-060-000. Parcel size is 4.879 acres. The existing land use is commercial, and what they are requesting is a less intense land use. They are requesting mixed use. This is an aerial of the property, and as you can see, can you see it in the red rectangle? To the south of their property is a house, a single-family home, a residential property, and that is low-density residential. To the north is a commercial property. So this is what it looks like currently. You've got the two commercial properties, and then to the south, you've got the low-density residential. And Mr. and Mrs. Johnson would like to have a mixed-use land use because they actually want to build a house on there. And they're not allowed to build a house on a commercial land use property. So what they've decided is to ask for a mixed use because that's a transition between low-density residential and commercial. And also in the future, it means that if they decide, because it's mixed use, to put a low-intensity kind of commercial business on there as well as their house or an office, they would be able to do that in mixed use. So this is what it looks like now, and then if it were changed, the mixed use color didn't work very well on the printer, so I had to kind of put that in there. But so you'd have low density residential, mixed use, and then commercial.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board regarding the Johnson property, ordinance 1032? Any questions from the public or comments? Okay, thank you. Then this public hearing is ended at 4:38. We'll move to item number 11. This public hearing will open at 4:39. This is the amendment to the City of bless you. Again, this is the amendment to the City of Lynn Haven Unified Land Development Code, ULDC 17-1, final reading of ordinance number 1033, floodplain management regulations. Mr. Schubert, if you don't mind, please, to read.
An ordinance of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, amending sections 1.07.00, 3.01.00, and 10.01.00 of the city's Unified Land Development Code to update the city's flood management regulations, providing and amending specific procedures and criteria for development in flood hazard areas, repealing all ordinances in conflict, providing for codification, and providing an immediately effective date.
Thank you. Ms. Richard, your report, please.
This is an amendment to the City of Lynn Haven Unified Land Development Code, and the proposal is to amend the code to incorporate federal requirements pertaining to the floodplain management ordinance for communities with inland Zone A and coastal high hazard areas, Zone V. We have those areas within the city. And basically the state has required that we make these amendments. There's a model ordinance which we have to adopt, and also we've been asked to make these changes to our code. The amendments are to section 1.0700, acronyms and definitions, section 3.0100, flood damage protection, and section 10.01.00, application requirements to the ULDC. And the purpose is to bring the code up to date with requirements of FEMA in the areas of floodplain management regulations and criteria for development in flood hazard areas. And I gave you the changes in your packet so that you could see everything that was being added and changed. It was too much to put on a presentation.
Any questions from the board regarding these changes? Okay, none from the board. Any questions from the public? Okay, and there are none. So this public hearing will end at 4:41. Thank you. Now we move on to our consent agenda. This items 12 through 15. I will read all the items and ask for a motion to approve and a second, and then there will be time for questions from the board, and then if there are any from the public as well. So item number 12, the minutes from the 5/22/17 special meeting and the 5/23/17 regular meeting. Item number 13, approval of award of operational lease for ballpark concessions to Coastal Parasail. Item number 14, approve the contract for installation of stormwater cured-in-place pipe, or SIP, to Gulf Coast Underground in the amount of $114,702.50. Item number 15, approve a contract for month pest control services to Florida Pest Control in the amount of $2,340 annually. So is there a motion to approve? A motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments from the board on any of these items 12 through 15 of the consent agenda? There appear to be none. Are there any questions or comments from the public on any of these items? And there are none. Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender? Yes. Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and so the consent agenda stands approved. Now we'll move right on to old business. Item number 16 is the final reading of Ordinance 1030, request for annexation of Andrews Plantation, and this is action required. This refers to number 8 on the agenda that we just did the public hearing.
You've already read it once, so you should be.
Thank you. So we've already read the ordinance once, so is there a motion to approve and a second?
Move
So
approved.
moved.
Second.
Okay, there is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion from the public? Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and so the request for annexation of Andrews Plantation is approved. Moving to item number 17, we've read the final reading of Ordinance 1031, which is the discussion and possible action regarding large-scale comprehensive plan future use map amendment for the fuel depot. Action required. Was number 9, the public hearing. Is there a motion and a second?
Move approval.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion from the board? Any from the public? Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and so item number 17 stands approved. And then item number 18, this is the final reading of Ordinance 1032, the small-scale comprehensive plan future land use map amendment SSA 17-1. Is there a motion and a second for approval?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. And any further discussion or questions from the board? Any discussion from the public? Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Friend,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes. So item number 18 stands approved. So moving on to item number 19, the final reading of Ordinance 1033, the amendment to the City of Lynn Haven ULDC floodplain management regulations. Is there a motion for approval?
So move.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion from the board? Any discussion from the public? There is none. Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Friend,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes. And then number 20, this is the final reading of Ordinance 1034, the City of Lynn Haven Code of Ordinances relating to the sale of alcoholic beverages. Mr. Schubert, would you please read that ordinance 1034?
An ordinance of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, amending Chapter 6 of the Lynn Haven Code of Ordinances regarding alcoholic beverages, modifying the minimum distance restrictions on the sale of alcoholic beverages from certain locations in the city, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict, providing for codification, and providing for an immediately effective date.
Thank you. Is there a motion and/or a second for the action required on this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion from the board regarding this ordinance? Any questions or discussion from the public? There appears to be none, so Mr. Schubert, if you would call the roll.
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Friend,
No.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes. So the motion stands approved. Item number 21, this is the final reading of Ordinance 1035, which would designating additional city streets with a posted speed limit of 25 miles per hour or lower for golf cart use. Mr. Schubert, would you please read the ordinance?
1035. Ordinance number 1035, an ordinance of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, amending Chapter 66 of the Lynn Haven Code of Ordinances related to traffic and motor vehicles, designating additional city streets with a posted speed limit of 25 miles per hour or lower for golf cart use, amending Appendix D of the code entitled Golf Cart Areas, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an immediate effective date.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second regarding Ordinance 1035?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion from the board regarding this ordinance? Sure.
The ordinance doesn't specifically say that somebody under the age of 14 can't drive a golf cart. I'm assuming that is correct. They won't be able to, right?
That is not what it says. My understanding, and please correct me, Mr. Attorney, if I'm incorrect, it does say that, as the ordinance read before, that's how it's been, that someone who is 14 may drive, but they have to have a licensed driver with them. That's my understanding. Is that correct?
That's correct. And you asked if they were under 14, and that's prohibited by state law, so.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Are there any?
Thank you.
Oh, sure. Any other questions from the board?
Yes, Mayor, if I may.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to point out once again, not necessarily go over the roads of concern that I had originally had. I can certainly do that. But as I mentioned at the last meeting, I think the statute's very clear that as a responsible local government, we have to determine that the roads are safe for golf carts. And I'm just not sure that we've done that for all of the roads in Lynn Haven that are 25 miles an hour or less. So I just wanted to bring that up again and just simply mention that. And I will mention a couple of the roads that I brought during the workshop as roads of concern because for whatever reason, again, the statute speaks to we should take into consideration speed, traffic count, and the character of the road. Some of the roads of concern is the Hilltop, and these are roads that I would say that we should at least look closer at and then possibly exclude from the ordinance. Right now, the ordinance as it reads gives us the opportunity to exclude roads, but it says none. But like Hilltop going up and around the sports complex, Carla, and around the industrial park, Minnesota, just partial between Baldwin and Pine Forest. That's a collector road, for instance. A lot of traffic on that road. Anyway, 5th Street, Tennessee, Maryland, Connecticut, back there where General Dynamics, we talked about some of the issues back there, and also Main Street. So again, my concern is, I think everyone knows I'm completely 100% for golf carts, brought it to the table in 2012. I'm just concerned that we haven't done as the responsible local government, that we've done our due diligence to say that all the roads that we're claiming 25 miles an hour or less are safe for golf carts.
Okay. I would counter that by saying that during the workshop, I think we did do due diligence in discussing the merits and not merits of some of the roads. I think we had some, we agreed to disagree on some of it. But as far as due diligence of discussion and research, I don't think the board's been remiss in that at all. That's just my comment. Anybody else?
And if I could, just one last item. I'd also like to suggest that, and I did speak with city attorney to say, we brought up in the workshop, or at least I did, registration of golf carts. Not for big government, not for registration, not for regulations at all, but I think it gives us the opportunity to know how many carts are on, or potentially on the roads of Lynn Haven. If we can't do that because of the statute, I had a long conversation with the city attorney on that. I'm certainly not going to go against his opinion, but I think maybe the ordinance would allow us to do maybe a volunteer type of registration. Again, just a very small fee, cover the cost of a sticker. I think it gives law enforcement an opportunity if a golf cart is abandoned or in an accident or something, we can track down the owner of that. So just a thought there, and of course I would also like to mention that, again, I think communication is the key. I think education is the key. If this thing is passed, then I certainly would like to suggest that we do a flyer, we do as much education as we can. I know there's some work on the website ready to go, so I think that's all good, but I think just education is the key to this. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?
One more quick
Please.
question. Question, I guess, is probably for the city manager. You're going to put a map out that stipulates what roads they can ride on. Is that my understanding?
Correct.
On that map, my understanding is if the sidewalks are 8 foot or wider, they can ride on those too, right?
The city attorney can answer that, but yes, I believe that's correct, but I don't know that we have any in the city.
If we do, could I request that we make sure those are marked
Sure.
on the map too?
Sure.
Okay. That's all I got.
Okay. Any comments or questions from the public? Yes, sir.
Discussion if I can get up.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Busted my hip doing yard work.
I'm sorry.
A little bit lame. Okay. Madam Mayor, Commissioners, I'm John Miller, 615 Michigan Avenue in Lynn Haven. I was communicating with you, Mayor Anderson, but you had your husband ill, so I left you alone. And, Commissioner Friend was the only one that replied to my email, so I picked it up from there.
Okay.
And I'm not pro or con. I want to get everybody's adrenaline down. This is going to go through. I'm concerned with some of the things that Commissioner Friend said, and I'm just going to run through my narrative and see if it generates any discussion.
Sure.
Okay. The statute, and I have it in my hand, I gave everybody a copy, talks about you can create more restrictive ordinances, and then it says that any other ordinance that applies would be contained herein. The only one contained herein is one that requires additional safety equipment. My argument is that if you read that it's saying that if you have an unlicensed driver, you can require them to have flashing lights, a low-speed vehicle sign, and you can require the additional equipment. And I attached that one to it. Now, that's what I think the legislature intended. However, and the attorney's absolutely right, in 2016, that was an Attorney General opinion in 2016. In 2005, somebody slipped in that sentence about an unlicensed driver, and nobody in the Florida legislature knows who did it, why, or what the discussion was. So, that said, I checked personally over 20 communities in Florida that have existing ordinances that require insurance, registration, additional equipment, just licensed drivers. And I think the attorney, he could nod or yell or whatever, has checked 29 other communities. The only place in Florida that has golf cart ordinances that doesn't require anything is Bay County, Panama City and Panama City Beach. I don't think we want to emulate Panama City Beach. Don't really have anything against Panama City, but Panama City Beach is going wild with whatever they want to do. So, including walking out before the press can talk to them. That was within the last couple of days. Before I came down here, I just picked up a couple of examples. This is the Tallahassee ordinance. Southwood is a bedroom community over in Tallahassee. Tallahassee requires driver's license, seat belts, horn, and liability insurance. That's theirs.
Mr. Miller, I don't want to interrupt you. You're at the end of the 3 minutes. I'm not going to cut you off. If you could just wrap it up in about another...
I'll wrap it up really quick.
Thank you very
I'll
much.
wrap it up really quick. Sanford requires registration and insurance. Dunedin requires registration, driver's license, and insurance. And for me personally, it's a done deal. But the absolute minimum that I would be happy with is free registration, mandatory, so the police can go find one. If it's abandoned, they can find the owner. Or if one smacks somebody's vehicle in their driveway, you can find out who owned the thing. And I'm darned if I can see how all these other communities can have these ordinances, and they're standing up. Nobody's sued them in court yet, all over the state, and that little old Bay County is going to do it their own way. So that's it. I appreciate you hearing me out. I think registration's the least we can do. Last thing I'm going to say is my concern about all this, I live at 7th in Michigan. I've seen some really dumb stuff from golf carts in the last 33 years. Some really dumb stuff.
Thank you so much for your comments. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name is George Hines, 1603 Rhode Island Avenue, over in North Harbor Landing. This ordinance said that you can additional streets with the limit of 25 or more. Over my area, we have 14th Street. A lot of tractor trailers run through there going to the industrial park. I'm wondering, do you have a list of the streets that you're going to designate? Or are you going to take in them from 30 down to 25?
It's just 25 miles per hour.
The one that's already posted. Okay, so there's no new streets. That was my question. Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Anyone else have a comment? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, sir. All right, go ahead if you have a question.
Is the bridge got left out of this ordinance, or is it included in the speed limit discussion?
The bridge is part of the park, and it is not included in this ordinance. Okay? Yes. Is there anyone else? Any further? Yes, sir.
My name is Mike Hemman. I'm president of MPH Transportation Planning. I worked with Ms. Richard and Chris Forehand on the mobility plan. And one of the
and your
components
address is?
Pardon me?
Your address is?
I live in Tallahassee, actually, in Southwood Community. So
Then I would not be allowed to let you speak on this issue since you're not a Lynn Haven resident.
Okay.
I apologize.
The only thing I
He
want
can
to
speak, he just has to provide his address, that's all. He has a right to, yeah, he has a right to speak.
Okay, I stand corrected. I thought you had to be a Lynn Haven resident to make comments about what we were trying to pass. I stand corrected by the attorney. Go ahead.
The only thing I wanted to point out was the fact is that one of the components of the mobility plan is that it will help all modes of transportation, including golf carts, so the funds collected for that could be used for widened multi-use paths. According to state statutes, an 8-foot path parallel to a roadway, even a state roadway, can be used for shared vehicles, including golf carts. The requirements, obviously, as you're aware of, as the city attorney has included, is that those golf carts have to have headlights, taillights, reflectors front and back, and everything else. But they can be used. The funds that were initiated for the mobility fees would be applicable to golf cart paths, including...
As an alternative way of transportation to cut down. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And I do apologize to everyone because after 2 years of being mayor, my understanding was anytime we were discussing an ordinance or a change or regulation for our city, that you had to be a resident of the city to make a comment about that at a city meeting. So I stand corrected. Thank you very much. I've learned something new once again. Thank you, sir, for your comment. Anyone else have a question or a comment? Sure, go ahead.
Based on Mr. Miller's conversation there. I'd just like it known that I would not be opposed to free registration of golf carts. I think it's a great idea, as long as it doesn't cost the citizens more money. But if I owned a golf cart, I would probably want to register it just in case, if it had been stolen or anything, so somebody could find me. That's a good point, I thought.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Bob Schultz, 509 Pennsylvania Avenue. I just wondered, can these golf carts, will they be allowed to park in car parking spots in the
My
city?
understanding is that a golf cart can park in a parking space like another vehicle. Is that your understanding?
I mean, if it's, it would depend on, it would depend.
You don't
Classic
know.
lawyer answer.
You don't know?
I was about to say that was a bit nebulous. It would depend.
Okay, because if you have the event going on and you have a bunch of golf carts taking parking spots for
Yeah,
cars.
if it's a city street and then the golf cart use is allowed, I think that would be perfectly fine. If you're going to park it on 77, there may be some problems with that, or. I mean,
But you're not supposed to be driving them on 77,
that's
so
what I mean,
that would not be an issue.
Yeah.
And the other point that I would make about the parking is if you're driving your golf cart and not your car, you couldn't take 2 parking spots, so you're not taking up any more, correct? Anyone else, comment or questions? Yes, sir.
I have a question. I slipped into Florida statutes, Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan.
Thank
I
you.
slipped into Florida statutes on golf carts, and the only stipulation I found that I could see was state of Florida required that the golf carts be titled. Is that correct?
I don't know.
What I'm looking at is when the police officer pulls over a 14-year-old who doesn't know if he's 14 or 13 or whatever, and he's trying to cite him for something, what's he going to cite him for? How is he going to find out who he is? How is he going to give a ticket? And that statute seemed to come to
Well, if he's
say-
14, he has to have a licensed driver with him, so they're going to
Right.
have to have a driver's license,
Yeah,
and
right.
there you go.
But suppose there isn't.
Well, then you're going to have to start tracking down who their parent is the same way you would now.
There you go with the registration. But I was just thinking, if it is titled, at least you'd have something to find the person on. But I was just wondering if it's in the Florida, I thought it was, I read it was supposed to be. Is
No.
your golf cart titled?
No, there's nothing about a title.
Thank you, I just wanted to bring that up.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, let me get to the microphone. I'm sorry I came in late. I was getting some rat poison
No
pumped
problem.
in me, and I'm on chemo. I missed the reading of the ordinance. Is there any way we can get a copy of it
Absolutely.
now or after the meeting, or what?
I will
Can I approach?
pass you my copy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment or a question?
Got one more question.
Sure.
Is it still the legal opinion of our lawyer that we can't be more restrictive than the state, so we can't register, we can't? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we covered it in the workshop. There's been and I understand the confusion. It's confused lots of lawyers in the state, too. There's, basically, there's been a series of Attorney General opinions that have restricted or interpreted the statute as restricting, and the state is preempting all this information. So, and I agree, there are 20, 30 jurisdictions across the state that allow some of these things. My opinion would be those are unenforceable ordinances. So if someone were charged with something, they could possibly have that ordinance overturned.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments for discussion? Yes, ma'am.
So I just want to make sure I understand, too. Can it be a voluntary free registration to protect ourselves or a golf cart owner?
We can have a voluntary registration program, yes.
So that the police department would have access to that, correct? And that would just protect ourselves if we were, I don't own one, but.
Sure, I mean, and I talked with Commissioner Friend about this. I mean, there's a very good reason for that at some point, to track down vehicles that are abandoned, or if there is a younger driver in there, you have somebody who's responsible, but it would have to be a voluntary program.
And I just have one question. If Mr. Police Chief, if I could ask you this question, just for the sake of discussion. We've had golf carts in Lynn Haven in 26 neighborhoods now for many years. This is not a new ordinance. It's an expansion of what we've had. Just to the best of your knowledge, has there ever been a golf cart abandoned in the city of Lynn Haven in all the years that these 26 neighborhoods have had the golf carts? Have y'all ever just found one that somebody just left beside the side of the road and never came back to get? In many years, there may have been one, but we're not sure? Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to bring that up for sake of discussion. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Is there a motion? Have we had a motion and a second already?
I don't think
forgot.
so.
We've had a motion and a second. At this time, then, Mr. Schubert, if you would call the roll.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
No.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes. And so our expansion of golf cart ordinance will pass. And we are not supposed to really have cheering at the commission meeting, but we'll let it go this time. I'm very excited as well. I did want to make just one more comment about the golf carts before we move on. One of the goals of Lynn Haven, of our Main Street and CRA in the very beginning, when I first started looking at the possibility of seeking the office of mayor, one of the goals of this city was to be a place where we could walk, a walking, vibrant, small-town community feel. And I personally know that there are several people in the community who are very much against this ordinance, but I'm hoping, I always have a positive outlook on most things, and I'm hoping that this might be the beginning of bringing back some of that slowing down of our community. All of our streets are 25 miles per hour. All of them, except for 77, and it's 35 miles per hour. It's time for Lynn Haven to be able to feel safe on our bicycles, on our walking pedestrian paths, and for golf carts. And I am so optimistic and so hopeful that this will go forward as a very positive move in our community for us to become more neighborly, to see each other more often, for those who have disabilities to be able to travel more freely and more often, and for us to visit parks and each other. So I know there's some negative feelings about this, and hopefully they're not, not too many, but hopefully before too long that it'll be positive, and that I believe that Lynn Haven has its own personality. We have our own way of doing things. Just because this hasn't worked out perfectly in some other parts of the county doesn't mean that it can't here. This is a different part of the county. We do things a little differently here. And I'm looking forward to the results of this. And I thank the new members of the commission for moving in this direction and giving it a chance. And I very respectfully understand the misgivings about this of Commissioner Friend, and certainly respect your feelings, but hope that they're set aside soon. So moving on now then to new business, item number 22. The Large-Scale Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment, ESR 17-3, transmittal, resolution number 2017-06-685, amendments relating to a multimodal mobility plan. This is what we discussed in the public hearing, item number 7. Is there a motion to...
My notes say it hasn't been read yet.
The attorney said that we did not read that one, Mr. Schubert, so let's move back to resolution number 2017-06685.
City Attorney, do you have a copy of that? Would you care to read that?
I'll be happy to read it.
In my
If you'd
stack
like
of
me to.
200 papers here
Have
is...
it as well.
You've got to read that?
Got it in front of him.
That's it. Sure. Resolution number
Thank you.
2017-06-685, a resolution of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, authorizing transmittal to appropriate agencies certain text amendments to the comprehensive plan, amending the transportation element, amending the capital improvements element, and amending the concurrency management system element of the comprehensive plan, remove references to Chapter 9J5.055, Florida Administrative Code, remove language pertaining to proportionate fair share, and add language to proposed multimodal mobility system.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second for acceptance?
Excuse me, Mayor. I'll move approval and just make the note that that we have in the workshop in the future for this. I think that was a really good idea.
Thank you.
Amanda.
Second.
So there's been a motion made with the understanding that we will be having another workshop in the future to discuss more about the multimodal mobility plan. There's been a second. Any further discussion from the board? Any from the public? There appears to be none. So Mr. Schubert, if you would call the roll.
Commissioner Friend? Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and so it stands approved. Moving to item number 23, this is the development order approval for North Bay Haven Charter Academy. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, and so our attorney will need to swear in the participants.
Yes, ma'am. Items number 23 and 24 are quasi-judicial hearings of the City of Lynn Haven. If anybody plans on presenting any testimony to this commission, please go ahead and stand and raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you're going to provide is the truth upon penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. And if any commissioner has had any ex parte communications regarding items number 23 or 24, please go ahead and disclose those on the record now.
I've had none.
I've had none.
And I've had none.
Thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Richard?
This is a development order application. The project is North Bay Haven Charter Academy Administration Building. The applicant is Bay Haven Charter Academy, Inc., and the agent is Chris Forehand, PE, from Panhandle Engineering, who is with us tonight. The location is Buccaneer Boulevard, north of State Road 390. The existing land use is Traditional Neighborhood Development, TND. The size of the parcel is 16 acres, and what's being proposed is a 10,034 square foot administrative building. Parcel number 11344-020-000. This shows the location in the red outline of the property. I think you're probably all familiar with where that school is. This is the aerial shot, so the school is basically in place there, but what is being asked for is a permanent administration building. They have a temporary building there now, excuse me, but they are ready and they have the finances to construct a permanent building in its place. And then included in your packets were site plans of the proposed building, which will house offices. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the board, comments? Any from the public? Mr. Walker?
Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan. On the development plan, it said that the administrative building, there was a temporary one there. It would be removed, and then the new one would be put there. Down further in the paragraphs, it says that the temporary building will not be removed. What's going to happen? Is it going to be removed or not be removed?
I missed that. I thought it was going to be removed, was my understanding. Questions from anybody?
It's my understanding that it's going to be there while the new one is constructed, and then following construction, it will be removed. Chris Forehand might have more information on that. Is that correct? That's correct. Oh, and I also would like to state that the stormwater facilities and the parking are already in place for this agenda item, and the Planning Commission voted unanimously for you to approve.
Missed part of it. It'll be removed.
Yes.
That's all I need.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. At this time, Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
I don't think we've
Oh, there's
done
not a roll. I'm sorry. It's just a hearing. Excuse me. Okay, moving on then to item number 24. This is the development order approval for the advanced machine and laser. Okay, I was right. For once during this meeting. Okay, we need a motion for approval and then a second. Thank you.
Move approval.
Second.
There's been a motion for approval and a second. Any further discussion? Any from the public? Okay, Mr. Schubert, if you would please call the roll.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, so that it is approved. Then moving to item number 24, this is the development order approval for the advanced machine and laser, and we've already had we've been sworn in, so we can continue with your discussion. Ms. Richard, please.
This is a second development order application for tonight. The project is Advanced Machine and Laser Warehouse Expansion. The applicant is David Dominic, And the agent is Jeff Britton, PE from Dewberry Inc., but I think that Chris Shaw is here in his stead. Yes. So if you have any specific questions, Chris would be happy to answer them regarding engineering. The location is 101 Aberdeen Loop. The existing land use is industrial. The property is 1.84 acres in size, and the applicant would like to construct a 3,500 square foot expansion, a warehouse expansion, and accommodating stormwater facilities. The stormwater facilities for that industrial park were put in at the time of the original development of that park, and they're around the perimeter. So any additional construction over 500 square feet is going to have to deal with its own stormwater and tell us how they're going to, accommodate that. And they have done so. The parcel number is 11515-015-000. This is a location map, and here is the aerial. So you can see there is already a building on there. They are going to add on the warehouse. They are going to accommodate their stormwater, and they're going to do some perimeter landscaping. So it will actually look better following development than it looks currently. And those were the site plans. That's the stormwater pond. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval?
So move.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? Any questions or discussion?
Excuse me.
Bless you. Any questions or discussion from the public? There appears to be none. So, Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, so it stands approved. Item number 25 is Resolution 2017-06-686. This is authorizing the issuance of $3,910,000 in the surtax revenue bonds, Series 2017. Mr. Schubert, do you have that resolution?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Resolution number 2017-06-686, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, authorizing the issuance by the City of Lynn Haven of $3,910,000 in aggregate principal amount of its sales surtax revenue bonds, Series 2017, to provide funds to pay for certain capital costs and reimburse the city for the same, authorizing the award of the sale of the bonds, authorizing the execution and delivery of a loan agreement between the city and the purchaser of the bonds, providing for repeal of inconsistent provisions, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Schubert, would you like to give any further explanation or discussion of this before I ask for an approval? Or
Sure. This is we solicited, we advertised for a couple of weeks, actually a month, twice in the paper, solicited local banks, and we received some very favorable rates. Obviously, one was the best. It is a loan that will last for the half-cent sales tax, which was passed in last November. The term of the loan will not extend past the 10 years that this sales tax is in effect. The loan is for, again, roughly $3.9 million, and that's because to retain bank qualified status, we cannot take out a loan for more than $10 million in a year, and this would be the complement for the approximate $6 million bond we refunded earlier in the year. So we want to retain the bank qualified. We got a very favorable rate, and this will allow us to move forward with the pavement rehabilitation program that we've had, and we've talked about that at length. So this gets us started. We're going to look at a similar process for obtaining up to another $10 million for next year. We're currently working with one of our city engineers to do an RFQ for the design build for this project. So this would get us, a very favorable rate, but also down the road. And frankly, I'd like the city to get out there first because there's going to be a lot of competition, and the whole supply and demand curve is already in effect. So very favorable rates, doesn't extend past the sales tax, and I recommend approval. I think it's an extremely great rate.
Thank you. And just to sort of comment on what Mr. Schubert said as well, if you were not here at previous meetings, what the discussion was is that because we have voted as a county to go ahead with the half-cent sales tax, we as a city felt that if we went ahead and borrowed the money against what we know is coming in, somewhere between $17 and $20 million in the next 10 years, and then repay it before the time is out, that we can move ahead and mobilize equipment and save money in the long run with today's interest rates and having the equipment out there and get these roads paved within the next, 18 months to 2 years all in one fell swoop and have Lynn Haven looking beautiful and the roads safe and the infrastructure replaced. And so I think it's a great plan. Just wanted to chime in on that. And so at this time, if we could have a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Are there any questions from the board or discussion about this? Appear to be none. Any questions from the public?
Mayor, I'll just point out that Mark Musty and the bond counsel is here if there are any questions. From
Yes, thank you very much. Any questions from the public? And there appear to be none. Okay, Mr. Schubert, if you would, then please call the roll.
Commissioner Friend,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, and so it stands approved, and we can move on forward. At this time, we're down to the last item of the agenda. Been a long and exciting meeting again. Item number 26 is our public commentary. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. If anyone has any item of any matter of interest for the community that you'd like to discuss, this is your opportunity. Everybody's happy? I would like to say hello and how happy I am to see Mr. Leon Miller back with us. I know he's had some health issues, and we're glad to see him back there. It's nice to have you here this evening. And thank you all for coming. Also, our appreciation to the news media for coming and being here for our meeting, and hope everybody has a great weekend. And thank you so much. The meeting stands adjourned.